You got to be in the life of the church. For example, and I always get these chapters mixed up, but it's like Acts 8, 9, 14, and like 20 to 22, and maybe 18. Paul consistently, when he finds people that are uninstructed in the faith or only have a little bit of knowledge, he brings them under the episcopate. And then it says all the churches of God throughout Judea, etc., Caesarea, they were glorifying God together. So there's one church that they're all brought under an episcopate for, and they get permission to be these public teachers. And what I'm convinced of now, absolutely 100%, the more I study radical Reformation, the Protestant Reformation, the magisterial reformers, they lost. They lost the battle of the Reformation. The radical Reformation won. George Fox, Ann Lee, who's the Quaker guy? They won because the radical Reformation de-emphasized dogma for personal experience. They de-emphasized dogmatic teaching. They de-emphasized a visible structural church. They de-emphasized sacraments because everything was an inner direct experience, which is a perversion, by the way, of the Orthodox view. And that's what has won out, right? They were the charismatics before the charismatics. And yeah, you could trace it back to the histrionic Roman Catholic women saints and all that. But technically, you could say, okay, the Pope was the first Protestant, right? Because he's the first guy saying, I am sufficient unto myself. I don't need anyone else. By the way, I've been reading St. Nectarios' critique of the schism. And that's where he kind of begins the book critiquing the papacy and saying, look, this is just basically early Protestantism. When the papacy says, I will be above all my brethren and I need nothing from them. I alone am the autocrat. That is the first pride step that the West took with the papacy in the 11th, 12th, and 13th century. Fast forward to the radical reformers, the Ann Lees, the Hutterites, the Mennonites, the early Anabaptists, George Fox, Roger Williams. Their whole thing is, I don't need anything else but my own inner testimony. It's not even the magisterial reformers teaching. It's not Luther saying, yeah, we need to have a high view of the ecumenical councils and church fathers, or even Calvin trying to have some place for it. No. All of that's thrown out because it's me and my Bible. And churches, as Gavin Ortland just said the other day, churches are like Pentecost everywhere. They just spring up. So when a church just springs up, that's Pentecost, he says. Nobody says that that's what Pentecost is until radical reformers say that. Now, keep in mind, too, another key point of the radical reformers, that all of these people just default to believing. At least the magisterial reformers, who were incorrect on many of their doctrines, they still at least thought, I've got to have a way to craft continuity with the early church, right? I've got to have an attempt at an apologetic that shows that we're in continuity with Athanasius and John Chrysostom and all those people. However, the Anabaptists didn't care about that. They went full restorationist and said, hey, the church died, dude. We'll just go ahead and say the church died. And again, they're more consistent than the magisterial reformers because they recognize if the magisterial reformers, Luther, Calvin, etc., if they were correct, then why are they still attached to a church that's apostate, right? So they recognize this inconsistent middle ground that the reformers were trying to maintain. So they just went to the next step and said, just forget the entire first 1400 years. The apostasy happened immediately after the death of the apostles. That's the Anabaptist restorationist doctrine. That's what Paul Washer teaches and has for many years. When I confronted Paul Washer back in the early 2000s, when he had me thrown out of a church for arguing with him, when he invited people to argue with him, by the way, it was because I'd given him many books on the formation of the canon and the history of the church. And he had looked at some of that. And he was at fork in the road, and he said, I either have to go in the direction of a Catholic Orthodox type church. I didn't really know about Orthodoxy at the time. I was Catholic, but I either have to go in that direction of an ancient historic church, or I have to go in the direction of Anabaptist, because why am I still liking Luther and Calvin when the church fathers clearly teach baptismal regeneration, real presence, relics, saints, intercession of the saints, episcopacy, et cetera, right? So he recognized, as the Anabaptists recognized, and Paul Washer was just straight up like, it's a blackout, Jay. It's a blackout. I'm convinced that there is a blackout in the church after the absolute delusion, prelest pride. And guess what? All of these goobers are in no better position. And you don't avoid this by having no position. This is what everybody's been telling me for the last week. Dude, bro, all these people are neutral. Ruslan was trying to be neutral. God logic's neutral on the Trinity and on ecclesiology. You can't be neutral on ecclesiology. What are you talking about? Neutral. And every time people call in who are, say, new converts, we had a guy call in yesterday. He's like, hey, God logic convinced me Islam is wrong. Good, great. And he's like, and now I'm an evangelical and I believe in lowest common denominator. Okay, well, now that did you no good. So he who doesn't gather with us scatters abroad. Father Deacon, you had some great comments yesterday about that. Can you remember any of those comments you want to chime in before we go to calls? Are you there?
What was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, you had some great comments yesterday. I'm just kind of repeating a couple of the basic points because we're on YouTube on a live stream, and not a lot of people heard the X space.
Correctly, that well, something I didn't say yesterday, but was just thinking about when you were talking. Think about how thoroughly modern ideology Protestantism is. It's formulaic. It's reductive. Oh, what's the bare minimum? What's the lowest common denominator? What's the least I can do? All of that's very kind of modern, don't you think? Methodology.
Well, yeah, that's why the fundamentalist Baptist guy said, well, Jesus wouldn't have told all the people to go to the scriptures if everybody couldn't read in the ancient world.
But what I was saying is, first of all, it just begs the question when they were like, all it matters is you're a believer in Jesus Christ, that we're a Christian, I'm a born again. It's like, that's exactly what's in question.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we did ourselves a disservice of being somewhat charitable to even calling those outside of Orthodoxy, like Protestant sects, Christian. Part of the point yesterday was there's no way in antiquity the ancient heretics were ever called Christians. And they're probably a lot closer to Christianity theologically
than today's heretics.
Today.
Yeah, I mean, Apollinaris denied that Christ had a human soul and probably believed in all the other doctrines like apostolic succession, real presence. And that one denial, which undermines the possibility of salvation because Christ doesn't have a fully human nature if he doesn't have a human soul, right? That ends up being a thing that disqualifies Apollinaris from being a Christian. He is outside of the church after the Second Ecumenical Council.
The second point I made, was that yesterday? I can't even remember.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday. It was yesterday.
Was that, again, people, I know this might be complicated for people to understand, but who do you say that I am? Christ asks. Well, I just say you're the, I just pick, 86% of the true properties and I reject the rest.
Yeah, you're a holy prophet. You teach truly. You have good ethics, but you're not the Son of God. How's that? Is that enough? Because I mean, that's some true things, right?
So notice what you get with when you bring up, well, if all you have to say is Jesus is Lord, then the Mormons, notice that the Protestants freak out And then they start adding these things that are exactly in question. No, you have to believe he's the son of God. What does that mean? Oh, he's uncreated. It's like, well, where do you get that? Like,
yeah,
what's
and
the number? Like,
yeah, what is the number?
Why is that the essential? And again, it goes back to this
because that's what the Bible teaches.
Oh, there's this essential core and the rest of the stuff. Well, who told you that?
Yeah.
Who told you you can reduce it down to an essential core, and then that's enough that we're obviously worshiping the same God or same Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, if there's let's take 10 attributes of the Father or the Triad. Oh, I agree with 9, but not the 10th. Okay, then you now have lost the referent because you can't. For example, I can't. Oh, I believe in all the divine attributes, but not omniscience. Okay, well then it's not the same God anymore. Like this is not that complicated.
Too, you know what it reminds me of? You know, Protestants are really upset. Like, well, I know that I love Jesus, and well, maybe I mean the Holy Spirit which was in the gospel today, right? Like with the Samaritan woman. Soon will worship in spirit and truth. I mean, the Holy Spirit is present everywhere, convicting you, but
right.
I mean, it's just, well, he's worked in my, like, we don't
burning in the bosom.
Correct Jesus, right? Like, I mean, somebody has a psychedelic experience or they went on ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Oh, look how much better I am. I'm not committing crimes anymore. So that's the way I feel. And I'm starting to think the more that I see these apologists, I think we did ourselves a disservice to be somewhat charitable and even call them Christian. Like, we should have doubled down on exclusivity and just, like, it would have been better, but, like, you don't have a true...
Yeah, when people say that, I always just say something like, okay, well, maybe Jesus is calling you to a better understanding of him right now through this issue that we're discussing.
Because I do know, thinking about my own journey, noetically, like, in my news... Like, I've always known Christ. But what St. Paul says is, but I suppress that. So I don't know if my worship was directed to, like, yes, I knew God in my heart, and he was calling me into orthodoxy, and unfortunately I was stubborn and resisted that. But in terms of, it's a different conversation, like, what's going on in somebody's heart? Do they really know Jesus? Like, I can't judge that. But in terms of your public declarations about what your ministry is or whatever your Protestant religion, that I can certainly say and be like, it doesn't refer to anything. It's not a Christian religion. Like, maybe you know God in your heart, and we all do. At what level, I don't know. But I think we should start deconstructing the public kind of language and the religion and what Protestant and evangelicals actually say publicly, and just be like, that's actually totally false. It's not Christian, and I would never give you any of that.